It seems to be a trend in recent years that students are both under more stress and unable to deal with their existing stress from school, life, etc. This recent boom in stress levels could lead to an extremely valuable field of solutions that could create happier, more productive students. Holly Teray's meta-study of famous art activity practices could bring this practice to light. Teray found that using fine art participation could drastically increase the psychological progress of veterans coping with post-traumatic stress disorder, and it seems rational that this process could be applied to students. This study hopes to gauge on a spectrum where our efforts can help stress and the physical and mental health. The conclusion of this research is that exposure to art activities has a minor therapeutic effect on student stress.
In an effort to make our experiment available to students on campus, we engineered a series of art therapy events that pertain to themes of self-expression, for example, making a collage and painting on masks. Our group devised a test that would attempt to gauge the response of art on students in a limited capacity. This method involved having students participate in different art activities. We designed 3 art activities with therapeutic elements incorporated in them for the students to engage with. Activity 1 consisted of making collages that express students' self-perception. With Activity 2, the students painted their feelings, and Activity 3 included students making masks that portrayed their innermost fears. The art activities were available every Friday of the month of December. Before engaging, we asked students to rate their stress, energy levels, and emotional well-being from a scale of 1 to 10. In addition, the subjects were asked questions about a few health qualifiers, like how much they slept, their caffeine consumption that day, and food intake that day. After completing the art activity, the students were again asked to rate their stress and energy and emotional well-being after completed the activity. All participants were then stratified based off of their answers to the health qualifiers to gather a better gauge on what group our study would affect the most and the least. After hosting a series of 4 different art therapy events on campus, we were able to synthesize all of our data from the administered surveys. First, we stratified all 80 participants, categorizing their change in stress levels, energy levels, and emotional well-being based on their answers to the health qualifiers. We then calculated an average change among all the participants of how much their stress levels, energy levels, and emotional well-being were changed after performing the corresponding art activity. The distribution can be seen in the dot plots above, where each plot of data represents one participant. After calculating these averages, we were able to discover that, referring to the scale of 1 to 10, stress levels on average were lowered by 1.75 points, energy levels increased by about 0.9 points, and emotional well-being was left.
The differences observed in each category, stress levels, energy levels, and emotional well-being, were analyzed more closely through the distribution of changes done in the pie charts. It was separated into 5 different categories. Participants whose results increased by 5 points or more, 5 points or less, had no change, decreased by 5 points or less, and decreased by 5 points or more. Performing therapeutic art activities is indeed effective in lowering stress levels in students, which is evident in the 78.5% of people whose stress levels decreased, being that 15.2% of the people's stress levels lowered by 5 points or more, and 63.3% of people's stress lowered by 5 points or less. This percentage is 62% higher than the percentage of people who reportedly had increased levels of stress after the activities. Secondly, performing therapeutic art activities is also effective in increasing energy levels in the students, which is evident in the 58.2% of people whose energy levels increased, being that 5% of the people's energy increased by 5 points or more, 53% of people's energy increased by 5 points or less. Again, this percentage is 18% higher than the percentage of people who reportedly had decreased levels of energy after the activities. Lastly, emotional well-being levels in students definitely increase after performing therapeutic art activities. Data shows that 62% of people had their emotional well-being levels increased, being that 6.3% of people's emotional well-being increased by 5 points or more, and 56.7% of people's emotional well-being increased by 5 points or less. For conclusion and future research, we deduced that the stratified data from participants and the numerical differences in change calculated from the indicators that, on average, participating in visual art activities at some point during the school day significantly helps lower stress levels in students and increase their energy and emotional well-being levels. Due to a lack of time for preparation, our group was unable to get a deeper insight of the physiological aspects of the participants. With more time on our hands, we would incorporate therapeutic aspect of performing art activities by using assessment techniques like reflective client diaries, individual interviews, and other art materials and expressive tools that would communicate valuable perspectives from the participants for richer data collection.